Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
So glad you've joined us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Grab your stool. Jim Garrity's actually not here today. He's headed out to the West Coast. He'll be back on Tuesday. Rob Long, contributing editor at National Review Online, co-founder of Ricochet, co-host of the Glop podcast on Ricochet, is with us, and apparently he's dropping things in studio as well.
I just dropped my glasses, I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I was just so shocked to hear that Jim was going to the West Coast or that he wasn't showing up for his job today. What is he doing there? Was he going to be on he's probably going to be on, is he going to be on a show?
He's actually attending the Koch brothers summit.
Well, you know what? At least that's on brand. I'll stay with that.
There you
Good
go.
for him.
Absolutely. Well, they got a big win. I guess it was end of 2018 with the criminal justice reform, so we'll see what's on their agenda this time, but he'll have a full report next week. Rob, we've got good, bad, and crazy martinis today, so let's start with the good, and it looks like Brexit might be in the rearview mirror very, very soon. This is Politico. Boris Johnson on Wednesday, he's the Prime Minister you might remember in the UK, hailed the safe passage through Parliament of the law needed to take the UK out of the European Union. In a statement issued after the withdrawal agreement bill was passed by both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the UK Prime Minister said, quote, "At times it felt like we would never cross the Brexit finish line, but we've done it. Now we can put the rancor and division of the past 3 years behind us and focus on delivering a bright, exciting future with better hospitals and schools, safer streets, and opportunity spread to every corner of our country." And this, of course, follows Theresa May's repeated failed attempts to get this done. But parliamentary elections late last year certainly made a big difference, a big win for Conservatives there. So after, what are we now, closing in on 4 years since the...
Almost 4 years. 4 years. It'll be 4 years in June.
Yeah, summer 2016 was when the Brexit vote happened. So we're finally here. We're probably getting new trade deals with the EU and the UK out of this, Rob. So we should be happy that it's finally done here, right?
Well, I think it's instructive in two ways. I mean, as you put it, like 4 years ago, the people of Britain asked a question and they answered it. You know, it's always the old adage is true, which is never ask a question if you don't know what the answer is going to be. And people asked the question to the British public, and they expected them to say, let's stay in the European Union. And instead, they said, let's get out. And the politicians in Britain and sort of the intelligentsia in Britain spent about 4 years trying to convince themselves and others that the British people were just about to change their mind. And they asked them again, they would say something else. And that the people consistently re-emphasized what they wanted, which was to be out of the European Union. And it kind of just shows you two things. One, never think you're smarter than the mandate of the people. That's a recipe for political disaster, as the Labour Party's found out. And two, if you're going to scare people, if you're a politician or a policymaker and you want to frighten people, which is what the Remainers wanted to do, don't try to frighten them with something they've already experienced. Right. So the frightening thing, if we leave the EU, it'll be a financial economic disaster. And they painted this horrible picture of a Britain that's not a member of the EU, whereas most British voters remember not being in the EU. It wasn't that long ago. There was this strange disconnect between trying to terrify people about something they already knew what it'd be like. They said, like life under John Major, not bad. And so it was incredibly strange. It just turns out that people wanted a thing, and now the politicians have to make the thing work, which is not going to be that hard. You have an incredibly powerful appetite in the United States from the American government to use a British trade deal as a cudgel against the EU. The British economy, British trade positions actually increased because it's now seen as a useful piece of leverage for both sides. I mean, Britain's going to get some pretty good deals out of this.
No, absolutely. So what's the American lesson out of this? I guess a lot of these parallels apply because I mean, it's very difficult for America because, we haven't been stuck in the same fight for the past 4 years at all.
No, we've moved on. We put the rancor and the bitterness behind us, just as Boris Johnson wants us to do. What we're seeing it unfold right now in D.C., of course, is a bunch of people who just did not like the outcome in 2016. And they have been trying to figure out a way to make that outcome illegitimate. And you can see now that they seem to be obsessed with whatever new thing they can find to sort of undermine the authority of the constitutionally elected president of the United States. Like him, hate him, support him, get a vote for him, not vote for him. It doesn't matter. He took the oath of office. He won fair and square. And the trick is to figure out a way to compromise with him and to sort of bend him to your will. That's what every Congress has done since time immemorial. You have a president from another party. You just try to bend them to your will. And mostly that's awfully successful. John Boehner and the Republicans in the House under Barack Obama did a pretty good job of that when they took over the House. I don't know. My guess is that it's going to be the same outcome. The people will once again say, no, you weren't listening. So we'll have to say it a little louder, and it could be a very surprising morning for the Democrats, just as it was a very surprising morning for the Labor government in December.
Yeah, it certainly could be, especially when you get to points where they're wringing their hands that the general that is responsible for killing hundreds of American troops in Iran was killed in Iraq.
Yeah, right,
I mean, how many people do you have to try and find who you're going to side with against Trump? When you've gotten a General Soleimani is somehow superior to Trump, that's an issue. And I just heard earlier today that Kim Jong-un has kicked his sister out of the cabinet. Remember at the Olympics a couple years ago when she gave the side eye to Mike Pence at the Winter Games in South Korea, and the left was like, "Oh, you go, girl." I mean, who are they going to side with the president against in this world if the North Koreans and the Iranians are somehow the good guys?
Exactly. And also in North Korea, when you're kicked out of the cabinet, you don't go and write a book and appear on The View and do stuff like that. No, you sort of, I think he straps you to a cannon or something. I mean, it's a very, very medieval way of it's Game of Thrones over there. So it's nothing we want to emulate. But look, it is entirely the same issue, I think. Which is that they can't believe that the people did this thing, so they're going to try to scare the people for the next 6 months. But you can't scare the American voter with the evil, awful specter of a Trump presidency, because we already know what it's like. It's chaotic and it's messy and it's embarrassing. And look, I'm no fan, but it's not a disaster. 3.3% unemployment, whatever it is not a disaster. An economy growing at where it's growing and a stock market soaring the way it's soaring, it's not a disaster. You got to scare people another way, which is one of the reasons why scaring people is very, very dangerous and probably the worst possible political move you can make. You should just try to win on something else. And it's not as if there's a shortage of those things. It's just the Democrats prefer to say that we're going to enter into a chaotic and nightmarish dystopic dictatorship when, you just walk outside. It doesn't seem that way at all.
Well, Rob, you've talked about how people know what a Trump presidency would look like, so we can still scare people with what a Bernie Sanders presidency would look like. And that's our transition to our bad martini today. A lot of polls out lately, some state, some national. Obviously, the early state polls are the ones which probably draw the most attention. WBUR, survey of likely voters in the New Hampshire Democratic primary. Last month, in December, it was Buttigieg 18, Biden 17, Sanders 15, Warren 12, and everybody else kind of as an also ran. Now, just a month later, Sanders 29, Buttigieg hasn't really moved, 17, Biden 14, Warren 13, and everybody else pretty far distant after that. So Bernie's gone from third place to first place by 12 points. And CNN's got a national poll out showing him jumping from December to January, down 6 to Biden to up 3. And so I don't know if Democrats see him as the purest progressive, or they don't like the way that Elizabeth Warren tried to drop the misogynist bomb on him at the last second before the voting starts. But what's going on here?
It's hard to believe that Bernie's that far ahead, especially in New Hampshire, which is sort of tends to be a fairly sensible down the middle of the road kind of primary voter, both for Republicans and Democrats, except for the last cycle for Republicans. They tend to be sort of predictable in a lot of ways. I would still say that I understand the appeal of Bernie, because Bernie is a thing. You already know exactly the kind of campaign he's going to run. You're not worried that Bernie's going to say something crazy or weird. He doesn't have any baggage on the left, really, that's hurting him. I mean, you have some Elizabeth Warren supporters who think he's a misogynist. Although, to be honest, when you're talking about blue-collar voters who are really going to be put the next president in the White House, a little misogyny might actually be, we have a misogynist president who won the 3 important states. So it's not as if that's going to be poison at the box office, as we say in Hollywood. I would say the scary thing about a Bernie candidacy for the Democrats is that there is no evidence that people who don't like Trump don't like him enough that they're willing to go far left. There's a lot of evidence that people who don't like Trump would like to go to the middle. But the one great thing about Bernie Sanders you can say is he ain't in the middle. The guy who had his honeymoon in Moscow and took, adoring photographs of the chandeliers in the subway, he ain't in the middle. So it seems like a very strange choice. And I think you're starting to see the crack up happen in the media when they sort of start slowly realize that there's a high degree of likelihood that a far left candidate is going to win the nomination, which I think will mean 2 things. One is we'll stop reading about how crazy Biden is on the stump and the latest stupid thing he said, and we're going to start reading a lot about how bright and thoughtful and passionate Pete Buttigieg is, because they're the only 2, I think, that if you're a Democrat in the media, which is I repeat myself, the only 2 you really think can match can stack up. On the other hand, I know it's a bad martini, but it's a great one if you just love American theater, because if he does win the nomination, it is going to be Brooklyn versus Queens, and it's going to be amazing. I mean, these 2 guys, Trump and Bernie, they are from the same, and they're from 2 competing boroughs, but they have the same way of talking, the same pugilistic way of doing it. Those debates are going to be, as the kids say, lit AF.
So obviously, you got a lot of folks on the right who think if Bernie is the nominee, and as we know from 2016, the DNC is going to pretty much do whatever they can to make sure that's not the case.
Right.
But if he is, on the one hand, you got a lot of folks on the right saying he's too far out there. Even with the Democrats moving that far out there,
right.
He's too far, and that's going to redound to Trump's benefit. But, of course, Trump has high negatives, and you got a lot of folks on the left and maybe even among independents who are in the anybody but Trump camp. So is this Trump's greatest wish if Bernie's the nominee because it's an easier road? Or is America in peril because the voters might go with them just because he's not Trump?
Well, look, America's always in peril. Let's not act like America's not in peril. America's almost always on the precipice. That's why it's America. That's why it's great. The game the Democrats are playing is, we think that the 12%, Trump's a weak president, right? He doesn't have that much. His support's it's very solid, but it's not high. So the Democrats are saying that the people there in between, the great middle, the people who decide these things, they're going to hate Trump enough that they're going to buy anything but Trump, anyone but Trump, even if it's Bernie, even if it's Elizabeth Warren, even if it's somebody saying, I'm going to take your health care, I'm going to raise your taxes, I'm going to give free college to illegal immigrants. In fact, there aren't going to be any illegal immigrants because we're not going to enforce the border, right? So they think that you hate Trump so much, you're going to say, okay, I'll take all of that. And the Trump side thinks that you hate Trump just enough, but not so much. You kind of like some of the policies. It's a style issue you have with him. You wish he wasn't such a pig, but he is. So what? Under no circumstances do you hate him enough that you're willing to make that big of a leap. You might, though, make the Biden leap. You might go for everybody's lovable, doting grandpa who is liberal, but kind of liberal in a acceptable, old-timey way. And that is the calculation both campaigns are making. And I suspect that deep down, all the Democrats who are thinking about it and all the Republicans who are thinking about it know that the Trump side is correct. And we are pretty sure we know the Trump side is thinking that way because of all the trouble they're now in for trying to take out Joe Biden early on, or trying to replay the campaign they played in 2016, where they can very successfully paint their opponent as corrupt. And I suspect that was a, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think he should be impeached or not, that was a very smart strategy, because I think it is a kind of a Biden's the only guy in the field right now who can convince those people who are convincible that he's not an insane liberal and that he's an acceptable alternative, a non-crazy, non-communist alternative to Trump, put it that way. That's where we are in American politics right now.
So it sounds like you're expecting Joe Biden to get rid of the no malarkey on the side of his bus, and on one side say not insane, and the other side not a communist, and that's the path to victory?
I actually honestly believe if you listen, you look at his campaign messaging, especially starting in the first of the year, it will be the subtext will be I am not a communist, which we are now in a place that Joe McCarthy said we were in the 50s, where we have communists running for the president of the United States and very close to being in the White House. I mean, Bernie Sanders is many things. He is also a communist.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he kept saying go back to the 20, 30 years ago when I said a woman could be president. You can also go back 20, 30 years and hear him talking about how great all the communists are in Cuba and Nicaragua and all sorts of other places around the world. Yeah, but
he is a communist.
He is a communist.
Joe McCarthy was right. He was just about 50 years too soon.
Oh, man. So as you can tell, we've got you covered here on the political front, whether it's super wokeness, accusations of misogyny. But if you want to find a couple other voices that are good on these subjects, you can find the Mock and Daisy Common Sense Cast. They're two ladies, Mock and Daisy, who also go by Chicks on the Right. And each week they talk about things that matter to you, from parenting to social media, the dangers of political correctness, the importance of marriage, yes, men, and even family values in this crazy world. They're two ladies who are smart. They're really funny. They like to laugh a lot. They're conservative moms, and it comes with a dash of politics. Often they'll see the political headline and take it off on their own special way on their tangents. But if we really want to make America great again, they say we need to start in our own homes. So to find out more about the Mock and Daisy Common Sense Cast, head to chicksontheright.com or start listening on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform. Rob, let's go to our crazy martini now. And for parents who are, because the last one wasn't crazy enough that a communist is likely to be the nominee, or at least could be the nominee of a major political party in the United States. If any parents are listening here, you got little ears. There is going to be a 4-letter word as we quote a quote here, so just so you're aware of that. Impeachment is still going on, and yesterday was day 1 of 3 where the Democratic House managers are laying out their case. 24 hours of Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and Hakeem Jeffries and the whole gang there laying out the case for the 2 articles of impeachment. And as Adam Schiff and the gang continue, you, of course, have the mainstream media trying harder than ever to tell you that they're delivering an open and shut case, and it's really just obstruction on the part of the White House and Republican senators as to the only reason why this couldn't possibly result in a conviction and a removal from office. The crazy example of that, or the craziest example of that, comes from former Clinton White House spokesman Joe Lockhart. Like most people in that position, he never left town. He's still here. He's a lobbyist, and now he's a contributor on CNN. And here is his tweet that went out a little past 2 Eastern time on Wednesday. And here's where the potty word comes in. He says, quote, "Overheard convo between 2 Republican senators who only watch Fox News. Is this stuff real? I haven't heard any of this before. I thought it was all about a server. If half the stuff Schiff is saying is true, we're up Schitt's Creek. Hope the White House has exculpatory evidence." 38,000 likes, almost 10,000 retweets. 10 minutes later, Lockhart tweets out, "Okay, maybe I made up the convo, but you know that's exactly what they're thinking." That's gotten up now to 10,000 likes and 1,000 retweets, but as of yesterday, those numbers were far worse. So, Rob, I'm sure that's what he wishes they were thinking, but in an era when the slightest little slip-up can cost you your job in a number of places, as far as we know, Joe Lockhart's still in good standing over at CNN.
Well, right. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, this is exactly what he thinks the Republic. I mean, what's amazing to me is only true Democratic partisans, which is, again, to say everybody in the media and Joe Lockhart's friends, only they would read that dialogue and think, "Oh, I bet he really did overhear that." I mean, it's so mustache twirling. It's almost near the evil cackle. Boy, we are in very, it's almost like when you see the, in The Simpsons, when they have when they do that funny thing with the Springfield Republican Club, and it's in Mr. Burns' office and Dracula's there, people are there, and this, "How can we hurt the poor today?" That's like, so it's the liberals' kind of dream of what conservatives would be talking about. I am not licensed to practice psychology in the state of New York, where I am now, but there is a thing called projection. And there's a thing called wish fulfillment. And it's when you make up a story that you wish was true, even though you know it's not true. And it's usually the opposite of what is true. And in fact, what people are saying, American people are saying, viewers are saying, and certainly Republican senators are saying, is that all he's got? This is not, why are we here? This is a complete waste of time. And there's this psychological crisis, kind of trauma going on the left, where they're suddenly realizing this is not going to work. And it's not even really going to energize their base. I'm how old I am. I remember when Clinton was impeached, that impeachment, the country stopped. If you took a call or made a call in your office during the day, you could hear it in the background. People said things like, hey, are you watching this? And we all knew what this was. This thing is, I don't know. I asked my mom, like I called her today, are you listening to are you watching the impeachment? Because no, I'm just watching Rachel Ray. Like, nobody's watching this thing. It's a complete, and so this desperate need to turn it into something dramatic, including this dramatic villain dialogue, is just, it's sad. It's a sad thing. The point about the retweets and the likes, those are people who they don't care that it's not true. They don't care that it's true. It made them feel good. It was a little bit of a good feeling to think that, yes, Republican senators are still evil. Yes, we are winning. Yes, all your chips are sunk. You know, it was like it made them feel good, and that was the goal of it. It was cheerleading propaganda, fan service for the Joe Lockhart CNN side. Problem is, of course, real life isn't the Joe Lockhart CNN side; it's something else. And I, for one, I'm not. I don't want to get in the way of if the other side is entering its delusional phase, it's sort of, morphine induced dreamscape where everything that's happening is happening just as they want it. Okay, that's fine. I'll let them do that. They can have a nice sleep while American people go on their business. And I don't know, maybe Donald Trump passes a middle class tax cut like he says he's going to. All that sounds good to me.
Yeah, you hate to see people go off on these psychological benders, but if they're going to do it, they might as well do it in a year divisible by 4, right?
Exactly right. And if it soothes them, I mean, I understand they're in some kind of psychic pain. If this is what they need, the defenses they need to get through the next month, 2 months, 6 months, maybe 9 months, who knows? Then okay, I'm not going to get in your way. It's not for me to tell Joe Lockhart that what he needs to do is to sit up straight and watch what's really happening. If he wants to imagine and conjure up fake narratives that you and I both know aren't happening in the Republican Senate, he can go right ahead.
As soon as I saw that, I saw the two tweets together, so I didn't know that the first one had gone out until I saw the second one. And looking back on it, I was immediately thinking, wow, even Aaron Sorkin would call that unrealistic. But Greg Gutfeld over at Fox was even more brutal, saying, "Don't become a screenwriter, Joe. You suck at dialogue."
It's true, and it's sad too because I know what he was going for, I mean, but I think when when people say that even Aaron Sorkin wouldn't write that dialogue, stick with your day job,
which is probably making a lot of money at whatever lobbying.
Yeah, right. I mean, no tears, right? No tears.
Right, exactly. Rob, always a pleasure. Glad to be with you today. I'm sure we'll do it again soon. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.
Thanks. Rob Long is the co-founder of Ricochet. He's the co-host of the GLOP podcast on Ricochet, and he's a contributing editor at National Review Online. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a great review. We always appreciate those. And tune in again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.